Hello, I'm Nicole.
And I'm Cheryl, and we are the co-chairs of the Simsbury DEI Council. Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Housing. Today's episode is an excerpt from the Pathways to Affordable Housing in Simsbury, an educational program we sponsored in November of 2022.
This episode features Matt Straub from LISC, Local Initiative Support Corporation. LISC connects local groups across the United States with capital and technical know-how to help build inclusive, resilient communities of opportunity.
LISC is a national organization based in New York. They have 38 locations, but I think we should get right to Matt's presentation and all of the great information.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. My name is Matt Straub. I'm the Senior Program Officer for Lending and Investments with LISC Connecticut. So LISC stands for Local Initiative Support Corporation. I'm going to use a ton of acronyms today. I will do my absolute best to explain all of them, but please wave me down if I forget. So LISC is a CDFI, a Community Development Finance Institution. We are functionally like a nonprofit bank. So I'll get into this a little bit further, but that's kind of what our role is. So just to talk about kind of what I would like to go through today. So first, who is LISC? What is our role in this space? How can we help support the development of affordable housing? A little bit about the affordable housing development process. So where it starts, what it requires as far as funding, and then how communities like Simsbury can be supportive of that to really make sure that what you're getting is both, what the town requires, what its residents need, and to get something that ultimately the town can be proud of. Q&A we're going to hold till the end. So this is LISC's mission statement. Together with residents and partners, LISC forges resilient and inclusive communities of opportunity across America. Great places to live, work, visit, do business, and raise families. So LISC is an investor. We invest in not only affordable housing, but also economic development, health. We have a sports and recreation department, so to speak. The Connecticut program was just awarded a grant opportunity to help support the development of childcare facilities. We really do a lot of different things to help build vibrant communities. So what we do and how we do this is to work primarily with financial institutions, so banks who are motivated by the CRA, which is the Community Reinvestment Act. So we offer low cost, typically loan financing. We also do occasionally have grant financing. Mostly in the early stages of the development process. So we work on acquisition, pre-development, and construction lending to help bridge towards some of the permanent financing sources. Kylie mentioned the low-income housing tax credit. There's a number of different kinds of funding opportunities. Affordable housing financing is typically very complex. So what we do is help organizations get to a place where they can get shovels in the ground. So LISC is a national organization. We are based in New York. We operate out of 38 program offices. So I work out of the Connecticut office. We have space in the Nonprofit Center in Hartford. I live in West Hartford and work out of there a couple days a week. I live about a mile or so from 4 different affordable housing properties. They are a lovely addition to my neighborhood. One of them hosts a bike shop. One of them, I believe, is going to start leasing up in the next couple of months, and I believe they might have a cafe. I'm very excited about it. So just to give an idea of our reach in Connecticut, we've been operating first out of Hartford since 1984 and have invested almost $90 million to help advance affordable housing in Connecticut. So now we're going to get to talk about the development process. It takes a long time. So, Leanne, I'd love to hear if your experience is any different than this. But generally speaking, it is not unreasonable that for when you start thinking about a project to when you actually have people moving into it can take about 5 years. So starting in the beginning of the process, so looking at concept, feasibility, and site control. So you don't want to invest a lot of money trying to determine whether something's feasible if you don't own or have control over a piece of land. So first, identifying a parcel for which you have appropriate zoning, for which there are infrastructure in place. So typically speaking, you'd be looking for water and sewer, though that's not required. But if not, then do you have well and septic capacity for that site? Excuse me. And then you would also need to do things like architectural analyses, soil analyses. You may need a phase 1, phase 2, or phase 3 environmental site assessment if the site was previously used for farming or industrial uses. So all of that can take quite a bit of time. From there, you would look to apply for your permanent funding sources. So that includes, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on this, but it can include multiple sources of low-income housing tax credits. The state and federal government both offer historic tax credits if you're looking at renovating potentially an old mill building. The State Department of Housing has multiple sources of grant dollars that are used to fill gaps. There's usually some kind of permanent loan, and then you may have smaller amounts of money from the municipality, from Eversource if you have a particularly energy efficient project. The Federal Home Loan Bank of Boston offers grant and loan opportunities. It gets pretty complex. A lot of these may have 5 to 7 funding sources by the time all is said and done. So once financing is complete, you move to construction. You're looking at about another year of construction before there's actually people moving in, and then you can finally lease up. So this takes a lot. There's a lot of opportunities for things to go wrong. So for that reason, developers tend to be a little bit risk averse and try and move forward with projects that are likely to be funded, that meet priorities of funders, that meet priorities of communities. And avoid places where there's going to be a lot of pushback or a lot of risk that something may go forward after they've spent a lot of money. So looking at kind of some of the important questions that get asked at each stage, one of the big ones I think as you're looking at concept is, does this meet the goals of funders and does it meet the goals of communities? So a lot of funding sources are awarded competitively based on the priorities of the organizations. So whether that's the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority or the State Department of Housing, those are kind of the two major ones. A lot of those funds are awarded on, it's the 9% housing tax credits are awarded under the state's Qualified Allocation Plan, or QAP. And those, it's kind of like a scoring rubric. So you've got 100 points. The goal is to score as many points as you can to get funded. Typically, projects are in the mid 60s to mid 70s. So what you're looking then is different levels of affordability, whether or not the project has green features, whether the project is in a community or in a location that has access to what the state defines as high opportunity. So that includes school ratings, access to jobs, access to transit, and whether or not there already is a high volume of affordable housing in that community. So all of this doesn't happen just by the developer. They do have a pretty robust development team. So a lot of the work that happens, design professionals, financing, legal, that all happens before there's shovels in the ground. And it's not unreasonable to expect a developer will have potentially advanced $1 to $2 million to get those shovels in the ground, which again, as we look at risk aversion, that's why it's really important that a project, when you start looking into it, has a strong likelihood of being funded. And then the capital stack. So as I mentioned earlier, there's typically a lot of funding sources that go into an affordable housing project. So this is a relatively simple project, actually. This is one in Essex. This developer converted 17 commercial condominiums on the second and third floor of a commercial building in the Centerbrook village of Essex to 17 apartment units. So they were townhouse style units primarily. The first floor remains commercial. There's a bakery, music store, a number of different commercial spaces that are really vital both to the residents and the outside community. This project included 7 permanent funding sources in order to make that happen. So that included money from the developer itself, money from LISC, and then a number of other sources, with the largest being the Department of Housing. And then just a quick primer. This hopefully is not touching a third rail. I'm going to wait to do that until later. The 830G process. So I just wanted to kind of give an idea of what 830G is and what it isn't. So what 830G is meant to do is to place the burden of proof on communities who reject affordable housing projects to ensure that the reasons they're rejecting them are valid. So if you're looking for a variance, typically the burden of proof is on a developer for why a variance is necessary. If there's an affordable housing project, it is the community's responsibility to explain why that variance is not necessary. So ideally, in an ideal world, would help reduce rejections for reasons that are not valid. So if you have a traffic study and it turns out traffic actually is not going to meaningfully change, then the project should be able to move forward. Obviously there are some bad actors, but in practice, this has been a really vital tool for advancing affordable housing throughout the state. So next, I wanted to give a couple examples of some really great affordable housing projects in suburban communities in Connecticut. This says Norfolk, it actually is Madison. So this is a project that funding has been awarded and construction should be starting in the next couple of months. So Wellington at Madison is a 31 unit mixed income project. So this includes 7 market rate units and 24 affordable units at 25, 50, and 60% of AMI. So that works out really well because you have both a diversity of income within the project, which both for community reasons is beneficial, and then those market rate units can help subsidize the lower rents on some of the deeply affordable units. So in Connecticut, it typically costs about $7,000 per unit per year to sustainably operate an affordable housing unit. So that's, somewhere in the realm of about $600 a month. A 25% AMI unit rents for about $400 to $450 per month. So it is actually not possible under the current program to sustainably operate a 25% unit without having other higher income units there to help cross subsidize. So the town of Madison was really helpful here. They had both worked with the developer before they were owners to ensure that they had zoning approval for those 31 units, and they provided a long-term tax abatement. So one of the myths that Kylie didn't get into is that affordable housing, unless a tax abatement is awarded, pays full property taxes based on its appraised value. So that's one of the major cost burdens as to why affordable housing is so expensive to operate, and one of the things that communities really can do upfront to be able to make that more sustainable. So additionally, this is a great project in Old Saybrook. It's called Ferry Crossing. This was built in 2012. So 100% of these units are affordable based on 25 to 80% AMI. And then there's additional set-asides for veterans and the formerly homeless. So this was the first project funded under the state's incentive housing zone program, which helped to allow density bonuses for affordable housing projects. So this was built on a former DOT site. The state DOT transferred the property to the town of Old Saybrook, which then did some environmental cleanup. They leased the property to the developer, which is Hope Partnership, which is based in Old Saybrook, for $1 a year. And then the other half of the site is used for town ball fields. So there's ball fields and parking. So functionally, they're on about 2.6 acres for those 16 units. So it works out to about 6 units per acre. The previous project that I had referenced was about 10 units per acre. So as we look to advance affordable housing in Simsbury, I think the best thing to do first is look to your affordable housing plan. I did have a chance to review the plan. There are some great strategies there for how affordable housing can move forward here. The first one that the town can look to do is to evaluate town-owned parcels for their ability to support multifamily housing. So those typically, if you're looking at a medium-sized parcel, that would be a great opportunity because you can work with a developer proactively rather than wait for an incoming development proposal to come in. Additionally, co-location of conservation parcels. So thinking specifically most recently, I was reading about the Meadowwoods proposal. I think there was kind of a false dichotomy there. Your two options were not fully conserve the almost 300 acres or allow 300 units of single family detached housing, right? There's the developments I showed earlier at 6 to 10 units per acre. You could put a pretty substantial affordable housing development on a very small percentage of that site while still maintaining all of the conservation that you had intended through that 300 acre purchase. And then what that would do is both reduce some of the acquisition costs that went into purchasing it, as well as provide some ongoing revenue to the town through that additional tax base. So there's this is one of the things we're working on with the Connecticut Preservation Council, is ways to kind of work with conservation to be able to add some affordable units in places where that may help make conservation more feasible. Additionally, there was a note in the plan to allow for affordable housing or to require affordable housing set-asides in new developments. This is something that a lot of communities are considering, that for any new development, 10-20% of those units should be set aside as affordable. And that way it's built into the development finance from the beginning. And that's something that developers can be aware of as they're building out their models. Finally, looking at your zoning map. So I did see that there's map zoning here. And the majority of the town is zoned as R40, which is single family housing at 1 unit per acre. And that's a very expensive way to build housing. You know, land is a finite resource. Even your most dense housing district is about 1/3 of an acre and per house. And there's not a lot of that zoned in town, and a lot of that is already built up. So as you're looking at developing housing, density actually makes things a lot more affordable. So that's one of the ways that the town can look to advance new projects, is to proactively have that zoning in place, which both makes things less risky and ultimately makes them a lot less costly. So here's my contact information, and I'm going to hand it all over now.
Thanks, Matt.
One of the things I found really interesting about Matt's presentation was all the stages of development and how many players there were to make the shovels start in the ground.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things we found as we've tried to educate ourselves in this, and thanks to our friend Rich Correa, he explained to us that funding for affordable housing looks like a sandwich.
Yes.
And every time we talk about this funding stack, I picture that sandwich, and there are up to 10 layers of funding in the average affordable housing project. And all of that, all of the pieces that have to fit together come from the federal government, state governments, municipal government, and the private developers.
One of the things I found valuable too was in Matt's presentation, he talked about looking to your affordable housing plan. Our town has an affordable housing plan. Look for town-owned parcels that might be suitable for multifamily housing. Any new development should have affordable set-asides as part of it. And looking at our zoning maps, he points out that currently Simsbury's majority zoned for R40 residential single-family homes on 1 acre lots. And the affordability comes in density.
Mm-hmm. It seems complicated, the funding stack, and it is, but it's important to understand that this is not a decision that's made by just one person or even one board. Many players with many layers of funding have to be developed to get affordable housing in the ground and occupied. Density is more affordable, and that's where the cost benefit comes with affordable housing.
Thank you for watching this episode of Let's Talk. It's sponsored by the Simsbury DEI Council, and we hope that this review of our housing educational series has been helpful. As more affordable housing issues come before the town, it's important that all of the residents are informed. So thanks again for watching.
And we'll
See you around town.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.